Just as he's about to engage, his eyes catch sight of two chi-replenishing pills lying in the snow. He pauses, hunger gnawing at his insides. Why am I so hungry, he wonders. The question lingers as he eyes the pills, contemplating their effect. He already consumed one earlier. Would taking these two make any difference? He decides to stash one pill behind his teeth, saving it for the right moment. He'll consume it when the need is greatest. Suddenly, a pack of wolves encircles him, their eyes gleaming with predatory hunger. Suhei narrows his eyes and speculates that the scent of blood has drawn them in. Rather than feeling threatened, he welcomes their presence. Fortunate timing, he mutters. The thought of feasting on villagers no longer tempts him. These wolves will suffice. Without hesitation, Suhei lunges forward, his fangs sinking into the first wolf's throat. He rips it apart with ease, then turns to the next, dispatching them one by one in a flurry of lethal strikes. The remaining wolves snarl and snap, trying to overwhelm him, but he feels nothing but the thrill of the hunt. His hunger pushes him to devour each wolf quickly, savoring their flesh. But no matter how many he consumes, the gnawing emptiness inside him remains. The last few wolves retreat toward the demon bear. The bear, though injured, notices the approaching wolves and swats them aside with its massive claws, killing them with ease. From a distance, Suhei watches the creature, marveling at its sheer strength despite its wounds. The earlier confrontation with the snake catchers had left the bear battered, but it still fights with the power of a beast at the peak of the third level of spiritual cultivation. Suhei knows that, by comparison, he's only at the peak of the second level. A sharp pang of hunger shoots through him again, and his eyes flicker red as he struggles to maintain control. I must not lose my composure, Suhei reminds himself, fighting to suppress the wild urge to consume. But the hunger, it's relentless, clawing at him, demanding more. His mind drifts to the demon statue cauldron, and a chilling realization forms. It's the cauldron that's driving this insatiable hunger, urging him to devour. It craves something more, something far greater than wolves. It craves the power of the demon bear. His thoughts race. The bear is stronger than him, but it's severely wounded. If he could harness the power of the bear's demonic core, it would elevate him beyond his current limitations. But could he risk it? His survival has always depended on caution, on knowing when to strike and when to flee. The demon bear shifts, its eyes suddenly locking onto Suhei. He freezes, wondering if the bear has finally run out of strength after fending off the wolves. For a tense moment, they stare each other down, the forest deathly silent. Suhei takes a slow breath, forcing himself to remain calm. The bear's gaze seems to burn with primal rage, but there's also a weariness there, a weakness that Suhei senses he might exploit. I can't keep running, Suhei tells himself, the resolve in his voice hardening. He knows the risks, but the hunger gnawing at his core is unbearable. If he doesn't act soon, he might not survive this night, not with the cauldron's desire pushing him toward madness. Gathering his thoughts, he forces himself to stay composed. If he's clever and cautious, there might be a chance, a slim one, but a chance nonetheless, that he could overcome the demon bear. In a split second, Suhei lunges at the demon bear, both creatures driven by the primal urge to kill and devour one another. His instincts sharpen, and his golden tail lashes out, striking the bear's eyes with blinding precision. A guttural roar of agony escapes the bear's maw as it reels backward, releasing Suhei from its crushing grip. He staggers, his mind racing. This demon bear is leagues above the demon eel he once defeated in the river. Its strength is immense, but with its vision now taken, Suhei feels the scales tipping in his favor. As the bear thrashes blindly, Suhei realizes the chi-replenishing pills he consumed earlier are starting to lose their effect. The biting cold of the forest is beginning to sap his strength, his limbs trembling under the strain of the battle. He wastes no time, quickly swallowing the final pill he had hidden behind his teeth. Warmth spreads through his veins, and with his strength momentarily restored, he adopts a combat stance, intent on finishing what he started. He launches himself at the bear again, this time with deadly intent. His fangs sink deep into the bear's neck, and with a tremendous effort, he slams the massive creature to the ground. Blood gushes from the wound, but despite its blindness, the demon bear fights back with terrifying power. Suhei feels the sharp claws of the beast rake against his body, tearing through flesh and muscle. Pain surges through him, and he realizes with grim certainty that some of his bones might be fractured. But he refuses to release his grip. With every ounce of strength, he tightens his jaws around the bear's throat, his body screaming in protest as he attempts to snap its neck. The bear lets out a final, enraged bellow, but Su-hei twists violently, and the sound of bone cracking fills the air. The bear's neck is broken, yet, with a final burst of strength, it hurls him off, sending him crashing into the snow. Su-hei stumbles to his feet, panting heavily. The bear is still alive, but it's dying, its throat crushed, its life slowly ebbing away. Su-hei knows it won't last much longer, but he's not about to take any chances. He glances around, considering his options. He briefly thinks about using rocks as he had with the demon boar, but doubts that would be effective against a beast of this size. His eyes land on a tree, and with a quick decision, he wraps his tail around its trunk, lifting it high before bringing it down with crushing force onto the bear's head. The demon bear's body goes still. Su-hei watches, his breath coming in ragged gasps. For a moment, he remains motionless, unsure if the bear is truly dead. The silence of the forest seems to stretch endlessly. Finally, convinced that the bear is no longer a threat, he allows himself to relax slightly, though the pain in his body is nearly overwhelming. Su-hei begins to channel what little energy he has left, focusing on healing his wounds. His body throbs with each pulse of energy, but he keeps one eye on the fallen bear, unwilling to let his guard down completely. Suddenly, a noise behind him shatters the stillness. He spins around to see the wolves returning, their eyes glinting with hunger and greed. Su-hei's lips curl into a snarl. These scavengers dare to challenge him now? He bellows a warning, his voice reverberating through the trees. I killed the demon bear. You won't take it from me. But the wolves don't retreat. They circle him, emboldened by their numbers, and Su-hei's patience snaps. His wounds are severe, and his chi is nearly depleted, but he has no choice. With a growl of frustration, he swallows his last chi-replenishing pill, feeling a surge of power flood through his aching body. He prepares to face the pack. 2 hours later, as the first rays of sunlight break through the trees, Su-hei stands victorious. The snow around him is stained with blood, the corpses of the wolves lying in mangled heaps. His body is battered, his movements slow and labored, but the threat has been eliminated. Su-hei limps toward the demon bear's carcass, his vision blurred with exhaustion. The chi from the pill is fading fast, and he knows that if he doesn't find a place to hide and recover, he won't survive much longer. The battle with the wolves has drained him further, and his injuries are severe. He glances warily at the sky, his mind racing with thoughts of the snake catchers. If they return now, in his weakened state, he's as good as dead. As Su-hei trudged forward, dragging the lifeless body of the demon bear behind him, the cold air seemed to grow heavier with each step. The battlefield was littered with the fallen bodies of villagers, their once vibrant lives now reduced to stillness. He paused, his gaze falling on one corpse in particular. It was the father of the young boy who had once shared his fish with Su-hei. Beside the man lay the 2 dogs from earlier, their bodies motionless and stiff, frozen in death. Su-hei approached them, nudging the dogs with his snout, urging them to rise and flee from the encroaching cold. But they did not move. The dogs, once so loyal and fierce, had stayed beside their master until the end. Their unwavering loyalty stirred something deep within him, something foreign and unsettling. He had always viewed the world through the lens of survival, where only the cunning and treacherous endure, yet here were creatures who had given everything, not for power or gain, but out of devotion. His thoughts darkened as he resumed his journey, reflecting on the harsh reality of this world. How many lifetimes did humans endure, only to meet such tragic and senseless ends? He pushed the thoughts away, reminding himself that weakness led only to death. In this world, he needed to be ruthless if he were to survive and thrive. There could be no room for sentiment. Eventually, Su-hei discovered a cave hidden deep in the forest. A puddle of water near the entrance concealed it well, making it an ideal hiding spot. He dragged the demon bear's body inside, grateful for the cover it offered. His strength was waning, and the wounds from his battle were beginning to take their toll. But he had no time to rest. He needed to consume the demon bear's remains and cultivate before the snake catchers or other threats could find him. The demon bear's flesh was rich and potent, its taste exquisite as he tore into it. As he devoured the body, Su-hei could feel the demon statue cauldron inside his stomach coming to life, absorbing the bear's essence and fueling his evolution. His body began to hum with power, and a familiar sensation of transformation surged through him. He had felt this before, the moment of ascension, the leap toward greater strength. Golden spikes emerged along his tail, gleaming in the dim light of the cave. He could feel it. He had broken through to the third level of spiritual cultivation. Not only had he reached the pinnacle of this level, but his tail had also sprouted 10 golden scales, each one radiating with newfound power. Suhei reveled in the achievement, his eyes glowing with satisfaction. Every risk he had taken, every peril he had faced, had been worth it. As he settled deeper into his thoughts, a vision danced in his mind. Himself, standing tall with a mighty staff in hand, just like the legendary great sage Sun Wukong. He imagined reigning over the mountain, the creatures of the forest bowing before him as their king. 3 months had passed since Suhei's fateful confrontation with the demon bear. Winter had relinquished its hold on the mountain, and spring's warm breath had brought new life to the land. Suhei stirred from his deep hibernation, his body now measuring a formidable 8 centimeters in length, with 11 golden scales gleaming along his tail. He marveled at the transformation he had undergone, not just in size but in power. His senses had sharpened over the long months of rest, his perceptual abilities now far surpassing what they once were. Utilizing his newfound X-ray vision, he detected 2 wild boars roaming nearby. A hunger stirred in him, but it was tempered by a new sense of awareness. He reflected on his growth, both physically and mentally, over the past 3 months. It was time to stretch his muscles and hunt for sustenance. The decision was instinctive yet thoughtful. Swiftly, he struck, dispatching the male boar with lethal precision. The encounter ended in mere moments, his strength and speed rendering the boar defenseless. As he turned his attention to the second wild boar, he noticed her trembling. She was female and pregnant. His instincts urged him to kill, yet something deeper held him back. Sparing her life, he decided to consume the male boar instead. He had learned to respect the balance of nature, realizing that not every creature was meant for slaughter. Some had to be preserved for the sake of the future. The female boar watched in terror as Suhei dragged away her mate. Yet, Suhei was not concerned with her fear. He had come to understand that, unable to return to the village, he would have to rely on the mountain for his survival. Self-sufficiency was key, but so too was understanding the ecosystem. By sparing the pregnant female, he was ensuring the continuation of her line. As he feasted on the male boar, his mind wandered to the wildlife that surrounded him. 20 roe deer, 30 musk deer, and hundreds of rabbits, along with monkeys, wild goats, coyotes, and more. The mountain was bountiful, and provided he was careful not to overhunt, he could live comfortably here, indulging in the richness of the land. But Suhei knew that relying solely on the mountain would not be enough for his cultivation. He needed more. His mind drifted back to his past experiences, to the battles that had forged his strength. It was clear to him now, opportunity and adventure were what he required to advance, to grow even stronger. His resolve strengthened. Suhei decided it was time to return home, if only for a short while. The scene shifted to Thousand Snake Valley, a lush and vibrant place where snakes basked leisurely in the sunlight. It was a place of beauty, and with the arrival of spring, life was renewed. This was mating season for the snakes, and the valley was filled with anticipation. Suhei observed the scene from a distance, his thoughts far from the peaceful valley. Despite the allure of companionship, he had little time to indulge in such desires. Still, a blush crept across his face as he recalled the little white snake who had often tried to flirt with him, wrapping herself around his body in an attempt to get his attention. She was persistent, but Suhei had always kept his distance. He reasoned that they came from different worlds. Her innocent advances clashed with the dangers that now surrounded him. A year ago, he might have welcomed such attention, but now he had bigger concerns. Since embarking on his cultivation journey, Suhei had lost interest in trivial desires like companionship. His focus was solely on training, on pushing the limits of his potential. As he gazed at the vibrant snake tree in the center of the valley, its branches heavy with the fruits that would soon ripen, he felt a wave of anticipation. These fruits, which matured every 3 years, held the key to advancing his cultivation. Suhei recalled how, 3 years ago, he had accidentally consumed a snake fruit, and in doing so, gained wisdom far beyond his years. This time, he planned to consume 3 fruits, believing that such a feast would propel him to the 4th stage of spiritual cultivation. If he could reach the middle stage, he would be able to utilize spells, moving beyond reliance on brute strength and physical attacks. The thought of such power tantalized him. But his moment of reflection was cut short by the sound of voices echoing from the entrance of the valley. They were discussing the snake fruit. His heart tightened. He recognized the voices. The snake catchers. They had returned. Among them was the voice of the young snake catcher, who had barely survived the mountain encounter 3 months ago. He was speaking to his companion, Senior Sister Song. Suhei listened intently, his heightened senses allowing him to pick up on every word. The young snake catcher expressed his regret over the death of their partner, Senior Brother Ding. Senior Sister Song reassured him, telling him that the past should be left behind. What mattered now was his survival. As the snake catchers discussed their next move, Suhei listened closely. Senior Sister Song asserted that they only required 2 of the snake tree's fruits. One of the other catchers warned her of the fierce beasts that guarded the valley, advising caution. But Senior Sister Song dismissed the concerns, her arrogance evident as she revealed that she had borrowed a powerful magical weapon from their master for this very occasion. She seemed unbothered, even confident, declaring that the only creature worth their attention was the old Snake King. If it revealed itself, they would kill it and use its gallbladder for medicinal purposes. Suhei's eyes narrowed. They were here for the fruit, and they had a weapon capable of confronting him. He weighed his options. He could flee, but if he did, the snake catchers would seize the ripened snake fruit. That was something he could not allow. His desire to advance his cultivation was far too great. Reflecting on his current state, Suhei knew he had reached the pinnacle of the 3rd stage of cultivation. He had fought and defeated stronger foes, beasts like the demon eel and demon bear, which had previously fended off the snake catchers. Perhaps these humans weren't as formidable as they seemed. However, as he remained hidden, Suhei sensed something unusual. The snake catchers unleashed a peculiar air attack. The odor in the air was faint but unmistakable poison. Instinctively, he covered his nose and leaped into the water, his golden scales gleaming briefly as he submerged himself. Beneath the surface, Suhei calmed his racing thoughts. He would observe, wait, and strike only when the time was right. As he hid, he hoped that the snake catchers' greed and treachery might cause them to turn on each other, just as they had on the snowy mountain months before. The snake catchers' attack had nearly wiped out the entire snake population in the valley. As the few remaining serpents slithered away in panic, one of the male snake catchers turned to Senior Sister Song, his voice dripping with uncertainty. He asked what they would do if the old Snake King failed to appear. She replied with an air of indifference, explaining that if the old Snake King didn't show, they would simply take the snake fruit. But she was confident he would come. After all, the old Snake King had lived for over a decade, clinging to life by relying on the fruit to prolong his years. Nearby, concealed within the shadows, Suhei listened intently, a surge of anger bubbling within him. Old Snake King? Were they talking about him? His tail flicked with annoyance. These fools had no idea who they were dealing with. How dare they claim he was near death? Suhei retorted silently, seething. It was not he who was nearing the end, it was they. Every day he grew stronger, his cultivation pushing him further toward immortality. These snake catchers were the ones whose time was running out. Their ignorance infuriated him, especially their insistence on calling him the Old Snake King. He recalled how the villagers had often referred to him as Old Black Snake, an insulting nickname he had never bothered to correct. But now, hearing these catchers use a similar title, he began to question its origin. Why did everyone seem to think he was old? Senior Sister Song, meanwhile, stood in front of the magnificent snake tree, admiring its beauty. Her eyes gleamed with greed as she drew closer to the fruit-laden branches. Suhei shook off his irritation. Focus, he told himself. He couldn't afford to get distracted. The snake catchers were here for the snake fruit, and if they succeeded in taking it, his path to cultivation would be delayed. He watched, tense and ready to strike. Just as the snake catchers prepared to harvest the fruit, Senior Sister Song paused abruptly, her gaze sharp. Wait, she murmured. Suhei's heart skipped a beat. Had she sensed him? He braced himself, ready for a fight, when suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the valley. The ground shook as chunks of the valley wall began to crumble. From above, a massive shadow lunged toward the snake catchers. Suhei's eyes widened as a colossal black snake descended with terrifying speed, its attack narrowly missing Senior Sister Song, who evaded it by a hair's breadth. That's the old black snake, she shouted, her voice tinged with surprise, but steady. Suhei blinked in disbelief, his mind reeling. This wasn't him. This was the true old black snake, the one they had been talking about. The real old Snake King. For a moment, Suhei felt a strange mix of relief and confusion. So, I'm not the old Snake King after all? He realized then that this other serpent had been the source of all the trouble he had been blamed for. Its reputation had stained his own, making him out to be a monster when, in truth, he had kept to himself for most of his life, rarely leaving the valley until 3 years ago. He had inadvertently taken the blame for the old black snake's vicious deeds. As the two forces clashed, the air crackled with tension. The old black snake lunged at Senior Sister Song, its jaws wide, intent on devouring her. But Senior Sister Song was quick to react. With a wave of her hand, she cast a powerful spell, Swamp Spell. Thick, muddy water erupted from the ground, wrapping around the old black snake's mouth, silencing its roar and halting its advance. The force of the spell rippled through the valley, even reaching Suhei's hiding spot. Despite the spell's strength, Suhei could see that the old black snake was a formidable foe. Even in its advanced age, it fought with remarkable power, breaking through the swamp spell with sheer will. Mud splattered everywhere as the old black snake thrashed, its massive body coiling and uncoiling with terrifying energy. Suhei watched in awe. The snake catchers were dangerous, yes, but this old black snake was no easy prey. Even with age against it, the serpent still had the strength to challenge these intruders. Senior Sister Song, with a fierce glint in her eye, reached for her magical weapon, the spiritual bell. As she charged at the old black snake, the bell let out an ear-splitting chime, its power resonating through the valley. The old black snake writhed in agony, its massive body twisting as if the very sound itself pierced through its scales. Suhei, still hidden, winced at the noise. The surrounding cacophony felt like a dagger plunging into his skull, and for a moment, he thought his head might split open from the sheer intensity of it. Seizing the old black snake's moment of vulnerability, Senior Sister Song unleashed another attack. But this time, the strike merely glanced off the snake's back, ricocheting harmlessly off its tough, impenetrable scales. She paused, frustration flickering across her face. Its scales are incredibly tough, she thought, her eyes narrowing with realization. An idea bloomed in her mind. If they could kill this ancient serpent, its scales would make formidable armor. The temptation of such a prize gleamed in her thoughts, but her focus quickly returned to the task at hand. The male snake catcher, seeing her struggle, rushed to her side. "We can't take it down alone," he called out, urging her to join forces. She nodded, recognizing the truth in his words. Together, they launched a coordinated assault, their attacks synchronized in a deadly dance. Slowly, they began to wear the old black snake down, its once dominating presence now starting to falter under the relentless barrage. From his vantage point, Suhei watched the battle unfold, his thoughts racing. He couldn't deny that Senior Sister Song was much more powerful than the snake catchers he had faced before. Her mastery of the spiritual bell and her sheer magical prowess made her a formidable opponent. As the old black snake showed signs of weakening, Suhei's tail twitched with uncertainty. Should he intervene? He felt an instinctual pull to assist the old black snake. They were both snake beasts, after all, but something held him back. The snake fruit isn't ripe yet, he reminded himself, his eyes flicking toward the fruit hanging on the tree. If I act now, I might waste this opportunity. He clenched his jaw in frustration, knowing that it would be foolish to rush in too soon. But he couldn't just stand idly by. The old black snake, despite its age and reputation, was still one of his kind. After a brief moment of deliberation, Suhei decided to offer covert assistance. Using his tail, he picked up a rock, preparing to strike when the time was right. But just as he was about to act, he caught sight of something that sent a surge of anger coursing through him. Near the snake fruit tree, a figure was moving. A man had crept toward the tree while the snake catchers were preoccupied with the battle, and now he stood before the sacred snake fruit, attempting to uproot the tree itself. The man's greedy hands clawed at the roots as he muttered to himself, declaring that the tree and its precious fruit would be his. Suhei's eyes burned with fury. How dare he? His body coiled with rage as his tail lashed the ground. Anyone who threatened the very roots of the snake fruit tree was committing an unforgivable crime. Without a second thought, Suhei launched himself at the intruder, his intent clear. He would devour the man whole. There was no mercy for those who dared to threaten the lifeblood of the valley. Thank you for watching. To confirm you viewed the entire video, leave a comment with the word dragon. We can't wait to see you in the next chapter. Take care.